everyone. It's been a while since I've done an update video, so I thought I would do one. Gonna be a bit more informal than my last ones. So I want to give an update on Midnight of the Century, where I am in development, what's been happening, that sort of thing. If you haven't heard about it, Midnight of the Century is going to be my investigation TTRPG. So it's based on liminal horror and Into the Odd and Cairn, and it's inspired by stuff like Seven, Millennium, the TV series, Silence of the Lambs, Twin Peaks. So it's set in the 90s, the mid-90s, and you play as investigators. So it's a no combat TTRPG, so it's all investigation. So I've been developing that over the last few months. So it's been a bit slow going. I've got the kind of the core rules down, and I've got really one fully fleshed out specialism, which is what I'm calling the classes. Two really. So profiler and occultist. So they're kind of two different but similar roles in that profiler, the focus is kind of ex law enforcement. All the specialisms are outside law enforcement. That's a kind of a core concept of the game, is that you are not playing cops. You might have been cops, you might work with cops, but you're not cops. And how long you work with cops depends on how much the world falls apart around you. So profiler is kind of on the typical side of the law, is on the inside, worked in law enforcement, so used to be like an FBI profiler, for instance. An occultist is on the outside of the law, so kind of on the fringes of society. Something like John Constantine from Hellblazer, the comic and the film, and the TV series. So you're kind of on the outskirts of the law, so you have to work around the law rather than working with the law. So two different approaches. There's other specialisms as well, but they're a bit in flux at the moment as fleshing out the core rules. So I wanted to have two specialisms that play pretty similar and have similar kind of mechanics before, and get the core rules and core mechanics and core gameplay loop done before moving on and expanding out into other specialisms. So that's what I've been doing, is getting the core rules, building in the basic building blocks of the investigation, how clues are made, how investigations are run, how investigators find clues, what and when you have to roll, because it's based on Cairn and Into the Odd and liminal horror. I'm keeping that same framework, so it's a D20 roll under system. You've got three stats: body, mind, and spirit. So that's what you make all your saves for. Because it's based on those systems, it's rules light, and especially with no combat. So I had to figure out, how's that going to work? When are you going to roll? Where's the risk? Where's the threat? Where do you take damage? Because even though it's a non-combat game, it does kind of follow a similar loop. So the core loop is investigators get a case, they look at the evidence, or they look at kind of the brief. It's a serial killer investigation, so you're hunting a serial killer. That's kind of the core concept. So what does that look like? Yeah, so we've got the structure of an investigation. So you get the brief, you find out who the victim is, circumstances of death, where they were found, that sort of thing. So it's early on in the game, like as you kind of start off, you'll be working with law enforcement, with cops. I gotta stop saying law enforcement, because in the game it's cops. So it doesn't matter who they are. If they could be FBI, they could be local police, they could be RCMP, they're cops. So you're working with cops. You've been brought in as a specialist to investigate and find out what's going on. You find out who the victim is. You visit the crime scene. There'll be a couple of different locations you can travel to decide what to do next. and then through that investigation, one clue will lead you to another, lead you to witnesses or people to talk to, lead you to more information, which will then eventually lead you to the killer, and you'll have a confrontation with the killer. And if it's a face-to-face, one-on-one confrontation, you're probably going to die, because they're a serial killer, and you're a generally 40 plus profiler or investigator, so you're not used to throwing down or wading into combat. So you've got the confrontation, and then either the serial killer is killed by the police, by cops normally, or kills you, or escapes, or gets captured. So there's some kind of resolution to the investigation. So the kind of framework around that is what I'm building out. And as you can see, it's still early days. So figuring out what the basis for, like, how to build clues, how to build locations, how much information to put in, how much should I describe the world, how much do I leave it up to the warden to describe, how fleshed out does it need to be, because it's in a fictionalized time and place. So like mid-90s Seattle or Pacific Northwest, following on from Millennium or Twin Peaks. So that kind of thing. Like that's it's like a rough idea of the setting. And that's the kind of concept that I'm going for, or the main principle that I'm following, is that it's essentially not a simulation. It's not historically accurate. It's a fictionalization. So it's fictionalized 90s. So the 90s that you would have seen in films and TV from the 90s. So it's film and TV logic. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. If you go down a road of historical accuracy and realism, then there's a lot of heavy concepts and heavy tropes tied into serial killers for obvious reasons. A lot of trauma and abuse. So it's keeping it at a film and TV level to kind of be less heavy, if that makes sense. Just more enjoyable, because it is a game after all, and you're playing a game to have fun. You can explore heavy concepts, but it's not a simulation, essentially. You're not going to know the horrific, gory details of all these murders and the motivations behind them. You'll get an idea, but something like Silence of the Lambs or Seven. That's as far as that's how I picture it, at least. That's how it plays in my head. So it's figuring out what the gameplay loop looks like, and then building out the world and the organization that's behind everything, because I'm using Millennium as kind of a primary inspiration. So there's an organization that the investigators work for called the Oroboro Group, and they are the ones who who are working with the cops and are giving out the assignments and are putting you into the different investigations. So you're brought in as a specialist. You work for Oroboro. You don't work for the cops. And obviously, as you'd expect, there's more going on in the world, and Oroboro has their own agenda, and they want the world to go one way, and you may or may not want to follow along with that. So part of that is the concept of doom phases. So at the moment, there's 4 different phases. There is, let's see if I remember this right. Dawn, midday, dusk, and midnight. So obviously midnight of the century. That's kind of where I'm coming from with those naming conventions. So the earlier it is, if it's dawn, then kind of the world is as it is right now, kind of calm, well, as it would have been in the mid 90s. And as the doom phases increase, then the chaos in the world increases, and you'll start to see weird phenomena. The natural world will start to upheave, and people will become a bit more ruthless and reckless and behave a bit unnaturally. So, and that will determine the difficulty that you face. So if an investigation is set in Doom Phase Dawn, then that's going to be a bit easier than, or a bit less, I wouldn't say less deadly, because they're all kind of equally deadly, but less difficult, and you'll take less damage than if it was Doom Phase Midnight, for instance. So you take damage at the moment. This is kind of, I'm always saying at the moment because this is what the game looks like right now, and this is all set to change, subject to change as things develop, that sort of thing. So the damage that you take is in the form of like you take damage to your abilities, so body, mind, spirit. When you fail a roll, when you fail a save, then you take damage, and the amount of damage you take depends on what Doom Phase you're in. So if it's Doom Phase Dawn, you'll take 1 point of damage. If it's Doom Phase Midnight, you'll take 4 points of damage, because the world is a deadlier place and it has more of a toll on you and more of an impact on you. And if any ability score reaches 0, then obviously if you reach 0 body, then you're dead. 0 mind, then your kind of mind is broken, and 0 spirit is obviously your spirit is broken. So you'll all represent the kind of losing control of the investigator. You can heal from damage, of course. Healing is in different ways. How you heal depends on what type of damage it is. So 2 important concepts are haven and connection. Your haven and your connection. So your haven is essentially where you feel safest. It can be your home, but it can also be an office. It can be on the back of a motorcycle. So it's wherever you feel safest and kind of most yourself. So spending time in your haven can repair damage, and spending time with your connection can also repair damage. So your connection is the person that anchors you into the real world, into the world outside of your work, basically your investigations. So whether it's the real world or imaginary world, but they keep you grounded. They heal you in other ways. Spending time with your connection, or you're spending time in your haven. So your connection can be someone like a relative. It can be a loved one. It can be a pet. It's someone that you spend time with that kind of keeps you yourself. These things, your connection and your haven, can also be damaged. So there's a concept called fracture, which is still at the moment, it's if you roll your ability score, if you roll exactly your ability score, so I'm calling it a close call. So say your strength, falling back to old habits, your body is 15, and you rolled 15. So because it's roll under, you need to roll your ability score or less. So you exactly rolled your ability score, which means you almost failed, which means it's a close call, and that induces fracture. So this is similar to scars in Cairn, omens in Runecairn. So those occurred when your HP or resilience is reduced to exactly 0 by an attack. So it's meant to be something that happens fairly rarely, but also has some character development, some progression in that, because in Cairn, if you get a scar, then you've got a chance to improve some of your ability scores. So it's the same thing in Midnight of the Century, but it will trigger different events. So some of them are good, some of them are not. It's to keep the world feeling a little out of control. So as you can see, I'm still navigating the core mechanics, and this is an idea of what shape it's taking now, and kind of as how you would navigate the different investigations. but figuring out how that plays is what I'm doing right now. I'm in internal playtesting. Got a sample investigation that I've got right now that I'm building out and playing around with and using it as I'll use that as a template for future ones, see what works and what doesn't. So after I do a couple of internal playtests, I'm going to roll that out to some external playtests. I'm going to look for people to that I can run through an investigation and test the system with, see what it plays like, if it's fun, that sort of thing. That's where we are right now. I took a bit of time off over Christmas just to rest and relax, and so it's slow going back into it, but I'm getting there. And part of the reason I wanted to do this video was to have a bit of accountability for myself and say, yep, I'm still I'm making good progress. I'm still continuing with it. So my plans are get the core system strong and robust, strong enough to play and to kind of hold up to different, different abuse, and then expand out the world, expand out the setting and the lore, and the organization, do some random tables for like serial killer generation, that sort of thing, and then work on the aesthetic, which is the kind of the second half of it, really, the second element. So that's why I bought an old TV, the TV VCR combo, and some old VHS tapes. So I'm going to be playing around with VHS aesthetic and 90s aesthetics to kind of mix that with the actual mechanics and game, because I want it to have strong mechanics but also a strong visual sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. But no use jumping ahead, and the game needs to be fun. It needs to be viable first before I can start looking at making it look cool and that sort of thing. You can check out midnightofthecentury.com, where I'll be posting development updates. That's the best place to follow along. All right, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes and what form it ultimately takes. It's fun. It's a different experience because I'm used to doing combat games, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm eager to crack on and get back into it. Thanks, and I will see you next time.